Hello guys, welcome to Swift TV. Our story starts off with a boy, Bam, digging a hole into the ceiling that causes the roof to collapse. He looks outside and sees a blonde-hair girl, Rachel. She goes down to him. He tells her that he can't remember anything from before he met her. She hugs Bam and tells him about her dream to one day see the stars at the top of the tower. She begins teaching him about the world and tells him how to spell his name. A few years later, Rachel runs toward the tower with Bam chasing close behind. He tells her to wait and grabs her. She apologizes to him, then enters the gates of the tower. Bam begins to cry over the girl that abandoned him. The tower doors open and pulls him inside. He wakes up in a room. He finds the caretaker of the tower approaching him. He welcomes Bam to the tower. He asks for Rachel. The caretaker says he must climb the tower to find her, but he must take a test before he is allowed to climb. He tells him to enter the cage and break the ball to pass the test. He rushes to take the test when a black-haired girl kicks him in the face and scolds him. They give him a ball and tell Bam it's a lifeline in the tower. The caretaker calls her a princess. She tells him the test he is giving is unfair, but the caretaker says it is fair since he is irregular. She asks him to reduce the test, but Bam steps up and says he will take on the challenge. The princess gives him one of her weapons to help him in the test and encourages him to pass. He begins the exam and faces the monster. It rushes at him and swallows. The serpent regrets not spitting as Bam pokes him with the pointy end. Bam walks towards the ball and stabs it, but it doesn't break. The monster targets Bam again when the princess's guide shouts at Bam to ask the sword for its power. He asks for strength and light begins emanating from the sword, pushing away the monster. A woman appears and asks him what he wants. He tells her he wants enough power to find Rachel. The woman says he's handsome and grants him her power. The ball breaks and they begin to ascend to the next level. Bam wakes up in test 2. He is told that there are 400 people in the arena and they should unalive each other until 200 remain. Bam grabs his sword and prones on the floor. He is confronted by a tall man who tries to end the series, but Bam is saved by a woman who uses arrows, who then gets one tapped by a sniper. Bam confronts a giant clay doll. A blue-haired boy, Kun, tells him to leave the clay doll alone and to worry about the mutated crocodile standing behind him. Kun asks Bam if the croc is someone's pet, but he says that he is not a pet and his name is Rak. He attacks, but Kun jumps over him and walks away. He turns back and sees the sword Bam is holding. He trips Rak, then grabs Bam and hides behind the clay doll. Kun asks Bam how he got the sword. He tells him that a princess lent it to him. They begin traveling together and hide while everyone else takes out each other. Kun asks if he ever killed anyone before. Bam tells him that he doesn't know since everything he knows he learned from Rachel and he can't remember anything before that. Kun says his goal is to find allies without bloodshed. Rak suddenly appears. The announcer tells them the competition is over and they must now make a team of 3 in 5 minutes. Kun asks if Rak wants to join them. Rak says he won't team up with his prey. Kun says he's gonna turn him into a handbag. Bam steps up and begins talking to him. Kun realizes that Bam is running out the clock and they jump on him as time runs out. They are teleported to the next level. Rak challenges Bam to a fight, but he refuses. Kun tells him you're not you when you're hungry and distracts him with Snickers. The admin arrives silencing everyone. Bam asks what's a rancor. Kun tells him that a rancor is someone who climbed to the top of the tower where the king lives. The admin says too many of them passed the first test. He releases a tsunami of mana pushing everyone back. He tells them that only teams that can pass through the wall will be able to continue on to the next stage. Bam tells the admin that he didn't get pushed back by the wave. The admin calls him to sit beside him. Bam asks him about irregulars. The admin tells him that irregulars are people who don't abide by the rules of the tower. Rak and Kun walk through the wall with Kun's bag mysteriously getting stuck for a second. They greet Bam and the admin walks away. The third test begins. Bam asks about the ceiling and Kun tells him it's called a sky. Bam asks if they can see the stars from here. Kun says the sky is just an imitation since the real sky doesn't exist. Kun asks why he wants to see the sky. Bam says Rachel's dream was to see the stars, so it's his dream to take her there. Kun asks him if Rachel loved him so much why did she leave him, then calls her odd. Bam gets angry and says she's not. The announcer tells them it's time to enter the test. They go inside and find the admin. He tells them to pass the test they have to open the correct door before 10 minutes or they will be disqualified from life. They are confused since the test makes no sense. Kun thinks in depth about the test, but he gets overwhelmed. Rak kicks open a door. The admin congratulates them on passing the test and explains that as long as they open the door before 5 minutes they would have passed. Kun asks for the purpose of the test. The admin says that overthinking things too much can give them an early ending, then send them away. They sit in a conference room. The admin arrives and tell them of a bonus test. He says that they can volunteer to take the test, and if they pass they will be given the chance to skip all the other exams and climb the tower. He explains that they will steal a crown. Once acquired, one member of the team must sit in a chair while everyone else tries to steal the crown, and the team in the chair at the end will win the challenge. The first round begins. Little Green whips all her opponents with her sword. One of them subscribed to equal rights equal fights only to hurt his hand. They run towards the chair, but she jumps on top of it and claims the crown for herself. Bam's radar goes off and he spots Rachel from cross-map, but she doesn't answer. The next round of the Game of Thrones starts. The samurai throws his sword, then pushes them back. He cuts into the sword of another, and the sword he threw cuts the angel. For eyes start firebending. The samurai's teammates get into trouble and he saves him after defeating the fodders. The sleeping teammate gets up and shoots mana at Little Green. She jumps through it and is ganged. She gets angry and activates her weapon. She whips at the cocoon, but he dodges it. Bam's sword and Little Green's get drawn to each other. The sleeping man's team takes the chance to run away and is disqualified. Bam struggles to hold back the sword when Little Green breaks their door. She asks why he has that sword and tells Bam to give it to her. He tells her he can't because he has to return it to the princess. Little Green gets ready to fight when the admin appears and tells Little Green she has been disqualified. She makes a bet with Bam for the swords. If he wins the battle he gets her sword, but if he loses he must give her his. Rak and Kun agree to the bet and Little Green walks away. Bam's team walks in for the third round. They jump at the throne, but Kun releases a gust of wind then takes the throne. They attack him, but he uses his bag to absorb it. He throws down a crown to the floor and they begin fighting over it. He reveals that the crown he threw was a fake and puts Bam on the throne with the real crown. He opens the bag and pours crowns on the floor, then makes the fakes disappear. They gang up on Kun and charges at him, but Rak blocks, then one-shots them with his spear. The fourth round begins. Kun tells them to take a break. He sits on Bam's lap and watches as the enemy teams start to fight each other. Kun tells Bam some of the enemy teams are on their side because he helped them in the first round. The fifth round starts and Black Widow starts attacking everyone. Someone tries to run, but they weren't fast enough. She finishes all the fodders then attacks Rak. She deflects his blows then pole vault over him to attack Bam. Another enemy then stops her from taking the throne. Kun is suddenly attacked. One of the enemies stands in front of the throne and tells Bam that they won't steal the crown. Bam asks if she is Rachel, but a giant monster blocks his way. The mutated croc surprisingly defeats the feeble human and Kun finishes off his opponent. The woman in spandex runs at the giant monster. She evades him then hits the woman standing in front of the throne in the head. Bam realizing it's Rachel and leaves the throne to be by her side only to get hit in his head. He remembers a promise to protect her and a blast of mana explodes from his body pushing back everyone. He damages the woman and prepares to send her to Tower Heaven. The woman in the sword freezes time then puts Bam to sleep. Kun sits over Bam's bed asking him to wake up. Rachel knocks at the door and asks him not to tell Bam that she is in their group. He asks why. She tells him they can't be together in the tower because their relationship is a weakness. Kun decides he wants to keep Bam away from her because she is selfish. Bam wakes up. He tries to ask about Rachel, but Kun cuts him off and tells him everything is okay. He tells Bam that his training in mana control will start tomorrow. Bam gets new drip then heads to class. The teacher tells them to form a contract. Bam meets the floor guardian and he tells Bam that this contract will be a shackle for him. Bam is exhausted from meeting the beast. The teacher tells them to rest then dismisses them. Bam apologizes to the girl he hurt. She walks away when a one-horned man approaches him and tells Bam that if he needs help he will be there. Bam sits with Kun wondering where Rak is. He says that Rak has returned to the wild to train. Bam tells Kun that he will train hard as well. Later, the samurai and fodder one comes to Kun and Bam. They tells them that for their scout training they need to make 9 friends. Kun declines, but Bam convinces him to accept. In the cafeteria, the girl from the enemy team joins them. Bam asks her to be their friend, but she refuses because she doesn't believe men and women can be friends. Little Green comes in and reveals that the woman is a princess, confusing Bam. She explains that princesses are women in the tower who have been given the king's favor, but as a result of this, they are not allowed to give snoo or have offsprings. At school they train in mana blasts. Bam conjures an aura sphere that bursts all the balloons. The teacher praises him then Kun calls Bam over. Kun tells him that Little Green and the princess had a spar where they both were injured. The samurai comes to them and say they are having trouble finding friends. Kun says he has a plan. Bam brings the princess some food. They tell her she will get food every day if she becomes the samurai's friend and she accepts. They try the same with Little Green, but she refuses until she sees the steamy pie, then she accepts. They bow to Kun and thank him for his help. The new test begins, the admin puts them into teams A and B. Kun realizes that he and Bam are on different teams. The admin explains that their test will be a game of tag with the team's king trying to reach the goal while the admin's king will try to stop them. It's revealed that the admin king is a ranker. Kun makes a plan to stop the ranker. He uses the fodder one as bait. The ranker shows up. He begins by taking out their watchtower, then appears through the shadow and falls into their trap. Little Green tries to bandage him, but he evades and drags her to the floor. The ranker asks what's next. They run away and he tells them he will give them a head start. The ranker decides their time is up. He heads upstairs while fighting the students. They try desperately to fight back, but he is overleveled. He finds Fodder One and he surprisingly holds him back. He goes to the bridge and sees Kun. He tells the ranker that Little Green jumped off the bridge to get to the other goal. He calls Kun's bluff and grabs him, then jumps off the bridge. Little Green saves Kun, then runs towards the finish line. At the goal, the ranker appears and grabs her badge away, causing their team to lose. Kun apologizes that his plan failed, but they say it was not his fault and cheers him up. It's revealed that Kun helped the ranker to get up from the bridge so that Bam and all the friends he made can pass. Bam gets ready to take the test. His team argues about who should be leader. The princess steps forward and claims her right. She sends the samurai to confront the ranker while she heads to the goal. She kicks one of her teammates to the floor and explains that to be a princess she had to compete against other children, but she won by ending the other younglings. She tells them that only 4 of her class will be allowed to pass and begins beating their ass. She tells Bam to leave so he can see Rachel. He tries to convince her to stop fighting them when a fodder gets up and reveals he had a pay-to-win weapon. Bam blocks it, then rushes to see Rachel. He finds her being held by knife point. One Horn tells Bam to fight the ranker. He charges a mana ball, but the ranker easily paralyzes him. The ranker tells him to deal with the situation himself, then head to find their king. Bam heads to Rachel. One Horn panics and pokes her. Bam paralyzes him, then holds Rachel. She asks him why he came while her insides are becoming her outsides. Bam asks him why he did this. He says because he is weak and Bam is strong, this was his only way to pass, but he begins to cry, explaining that his clan was slaughtered by the strong and because he is weak he couldn't help them. He grabs the knife, then tells Bam he hates him before ascending to Tower Heaven. Fodder 2 shows up asking what happened. The princess shows up wielding the pay-to-win sword. Fodder 2 slaps her for being a traitor. The princess tells them that if they continue to climb the tower they will know only pain. She begins fighting the ranker. She abuses the weapon while Bam paralyzes him, then shoots a mana blast, but he dodges it and takes her badge. She walks to the ranker and puts her head on his shoulders. He laughs in victory, but she reveals that what he took was not her badge, but her paradise holders, then show him that she took his badge as well. They announce that Bam team has won. Kun sits and reminisces that all he has masterminded has been a success in order to allow Bam to pass. Little Rak comes to the door and begs Kun to make him bigger again since a ranker made him small. Kun says he can't do that. Bam comes in and tells them Rachel is now disabled, but he will be her legs to climb the tower. They hold a funeral for the one-horned. The ranker steps forward and offers a prayer. They toast to his life and send him off. Bam thanks Rachel for attending the funeral. She begins to cry and asks him why he followed her since she always found him annoying and ran to the tower to get away from him. Bam tells her she is his shining light and no one could ever replace her. He simps hard while she sits in her chair and cry. Bam arrives in the cafeteria. They bring him to the party. Meanwhile, Kun goes to see the admin. The next day they announce who passed the test, but Rachel was failed because she is injured. Kun says he's not satisfied with the results and asks them to allow Rachel to take the test. The admins tell him the rules forbid her. Kun asks to take the guardian's test. The admins say only an irregular can take that test. Bam stands up to do the test and reveals he is an irregular, shocking everyone. The admin takes Bam to a room and tells him to enter. Inside the room, Bam finds the guardian. He exits and tells the admin that the guardian is allowing them to take the test. The admin goes to the class and tells them the test is to protect Bam and Rachel's bubble from being popped until they make it to the goal. Kun sits in the watchtower and gets a report that 2 people have disappeared. Fodder 1 investigates and sees a bull having lunch. He tries to get its attention, but it ignores him, then heads towards Bam. He jumps on the monster and pokes it. The Demogorgon throws him to the ground and prepares for dessert. Little Green interrupts and saves him. She makes a bet with the princess. If she wins she gets a worker without pay, but if she loses her swords gets taken. The princess fights the monster. It restrains her with its tentacle. It's not 18 plus, so she breaks out. The monster retreats as they give chase. The monster hides in a cave. It ambushes her, but she dodges the monster, then gets grabbed and knocked into the wall. It begins to strangle her until she passes out. A man in a costume finds Little Green. He reveals that her mother was a princess and he smoked her for breaking the rules by giving away the cookies. He then shows her her mother's necklace and Little Green attacks him. He pokes her in the stomach, then taunts her as she crawls to her sword. He grabs her weapon and calls over the monster to drop the princess. He gives the princess the sword and tells her to return Little Green to her mother. She grabs the sword and holds it to Little Green's breather. They decide to team up on the mascot and she gives the princess Bam's sword. They double team him and knock him into a wall. He shoots lightning at the princess and kicks Little Green in her stomach. He tries to crush her when a rock suddenly hits his head. He turns around to see Best Girl walking and led by Fodder One. She sees her sword and asks for it. He threatens to tell the king. She says if he doesn't leave she will end him. He shoots many Pokemon at her, but they make a mess behind her. She flicks her finger at him, but he dodges. He shoots lightning at her, but the goddess just yawns. She begins walking towards Mascot and backhands him. She is about to end the fight, but she decides it's not worth her time and commands her subordinate to do it. Best Girl retrieves her sword. The used ketchup pocket tells them he sent the bull to smoke Bam. He and Rachel sit in the bubble and talk when the bull suddenly appears and attacks them. Bam shoots mana blasts, but the creature dodges it, then assaults him. He begins to charge another blast. The monster eats him and explodes in happiness. Bam falls down into Rachel's arms. Just as they are about to reach the goal, Bam reaches out a hand to embrace her, but she proves the good guy finish last as the vile evil she-devil pushes Bam out the bubble. It's revealed that after Rachel entered the tower she was told that she didn't belong there by the caretaker. She protests and he shows her the test. She says it was unfair. He hides her and makes her watch as Bam passed the test easily, then ascend. The caretaker tells her he will allow her to climb the tower if she agrees to put Bam in a pack. She immediately accepted and asked for a weapon. She goes on to manipulate Bam's feelings in order to get him in the perfect situation to backdoor him where no one can see, because she is jealous that she's not a star like Bam. Everyone stands around Rachel asking where Bam is. She tells him a bull ended him. They sit in the classroom crying. The admin tells them everyone has passed as rat grieves for their loss. They decide to honor Bam. They should carry out his will and take Rachel to the top of the tower. The admin sends them off to start their climb while Bam awakens in a cave. He asks for Rachel. He is told that he will know everything if he decides to train and climb the tower. He stands up and decides that he will climb the tower until he reaches the very top. There were 5 Easter eggs in this video. Can you find them? That will be all for today. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.